Thank you, Walter. Thank you for being so nice. I think I'm going to pay for it later, but thank you for joining us, Mr. Secretary. You know, I want to start by echoing something that Walter Isaacson just said, which is that this is the ideal place to start, talking about education when we talk about innovation. And in a moment, we'll talk about what we mean when we talk about innovation. But I also want to introduce you at the beginning of this conference to something that you're going to see reflected time and time again throughout the sessions as they continue through tomorrow. And that's a new poll which has been conducted by Newsweek, commissioned by Newsweek, and conducted in cooperation with Intel. Now, if we take a look at this poll, you'll see that 4,800 interviews were done in the US, China, UK, Germany. We're going to see the results of this poll throughout, and you'll have breakout sessions tomorrow afternoon, which will also speak to them. And the full results are also contained in the Newsweek International magazines in your conference bags. Now, the first question, which you'll see tonight, which we're going to talk about, or at least use as our leaping off point, goes like this. When it comes to technological innovation, do you think the US is falling behind or staying ahead of other countries? Interesting response. 74% of US respondents said we're falling behind. 26% said we're staying ahead. And among those who say falling behind, which of the following, we asked, is the most responsible? 42% blame American schools, 17% blame the government, 16% blame US businesses, and 11% blame US workers. Lots of blame to go around, but tonight we're here to talk about the first part, which is what happens in the US schools. So first of all, I want to start, Secretary Duncan, by asking you if you even agree with that finding, whether it makes sense based on what you've seen.
I think we've lost our way educationally in this country. I think we have to educate our way to a better economy. I think we have to continue to innovate. We have to continue to push the envelope. We can't think about incremental change. We have to think about transformational change. We used to lead the world in the percent of college graduates. We're now 10th or 11th. That's not good enough. On the most recent study of 15-year-olds' math performance, we were 31st internationally. That's not who we think we are, but that's the reality. So yes, I think we have to get dramatically better, and that's going to take fundamental transformational change and a much greater degree of innovation in our nation's schools.
Okay, I'm going to have to parse through some of that because fundamental innovational change sounds like gobbledygook to a lot of people. We don't know what any of that means. So let's just start with the schools. Do you agree with the people who say that schools are to blame for this lack?
I don't think you can blame any one sector, but do schools need to get dramatically better? Yes. Is it a piece of the problem? Yes.
So what do you mean when you say innovation?
We have to raise the bar for all children, and we have to close the achievement gap that Walter talked about. How do you do that? You do that in a couple ways. You think very differently about how you use technology to engage students, and you think very differently about the talent you're taking into underserved communities. Technology, talent, time, those things make a huge difference in our students' lives, and we have to, again, think radically different about all of those.
As we think about this, are we focusing, you know, I'm a writer, not a fighter, so math and science was not my strong suit when I was in school. So does that mean that I would be shut out of any kind of innovation economy, or especially in the schools, kids who are not focusing on math and science? Or should we be focusing on creativity? Should we be valuing that instead?
We should be doing all of those things, but I will tell you that we have to fundamentally improve the quality of math and science education in this country. We have a shortage of math and science teachers. We've had that shortage for a couple decades. I think we need to pay math and science teachers a lot more money. I think we have to find ways to engage the private sector, whether it's through alternative certification or helping to mentor existing teachers. We can't continue to do things the same way. Does it mean you're not teaching critical thinking skills as well? Absolutely not. Are you also teaching students how to work in a diverse setting, how to continue to apply their knowledge? You can do all of those, but if math and science doesn't improve as a piece of that, we're kidding ourselves.
Define innovation for me strictly in a classroom context, not what people in your position would be doing, or even what superintendents would be doing, or even, well, let's limit it to teachers and their students.
Yeah. To me, innovation is engaging your students in fundamentally different ways, finding ways to find their passion, finding ways to help them accelerate the pace of learning. Again, we have to get much better, faster. The only way we do that is through innovation.
Give me an example. Where have you seen it working?
We're seeing many, many places where teachers are now using what are called formative assessments, not high-stakes tests at the end of the school year, but ongoing assessments to figure out not are the teachers teaching, but are the students learning. And these assessments are helping teachers to differentiate instruction, figure out small groups of students and group them in ways that make sense. And these formative assessments using technology is helping our best teachers take their craft to an entirely different level. That's got to become the norm, not the exception.
Now, testing for a lot of people is a very scary idea because
evaluation, not testing.
Well,
evaluation.
What's the difference?
There's a big difference. Again, this is no stakes. I do think we need to evaluate students at the end of each year to understand how much progress they've made, but this is not about saying you failed, you didn't whatever. It's, are you absorbing, are you learning the material you need to know? And the only way you know that in real time is by using these formative assessments, formative evaluations.
You have used the term common standards. Define that for me.
As a country under No Child Left Behind, we've had 50 different standards, 50 different goalposts, 50 different states doing their own thing. And many people, including Walter Isaacson, who opened this, including Randy Weingartner, who's the head of the AFT, including the business community, have all said that what's happened in the vast majority of states is we have dummied down standards due to political pressure. We need to raise the bar for the entire country, and we've talked about college-ready, career-ready, internationally benchmarked standards. Having 50 states do their own thing does not help our children.
So common standards means everyone has the same measure, but what if you are the mother or father of a special needs student who doesn't meet a common goal?
I think you have to have a common goal, and you have to be working with every child to hit that higher bar. Now, if you have a child that is severely disabled, okay, that's maybe a slight exception.
Well, not severely disabled, but just not a tester or not a
I think we have to raise the bar. I think our expectations have been fundamentally dummied down, and that's a huge problem in this country.
Is this, can this idea work in the system as it exists now, the public school system?
Absolutely. And what you have now, this was a third rail a couple years ago. You couldn't talk about national standards. Right now you have 48 governors, 48 state school chiefs, the heads of both unions, the business community, the philanthropic community, all coming together to work on this. This is really an idea whose time has come. It can absolutely work, and there's been a tremendous amount of progress in the past 8-9 months that would have been unimaginable 18 months ago.
You mentioned Randy Weingarten. What do teachers think about this idea?
Teachers are the ones asking for this. Everybody's asking for this.
They'd rather test the students than the teachers.
No. This is about raising standards for everybody, and there's a recognition that due to political pressure in the vast majority of states, we have reduced standards, we have lowered expectations, and if we want our students to be able to compete in an international economy, in a global marketplace, we have to raise the bar dramatically.
So who's applying the political pressure, and has it completely gone away?
The political pressure has been to reduce standards, and there's tremendous pressure the other direction now to raise them. So there's always going to be...
But who was reducing the standards? Who was applying that pressure?
States.
State governments?
Yes, politicians.
And now they've changed their minds?
Largely. Again, there's always tension, there's always conflict, but this has been a fundamental sea change, absolutely. It's a fundamental breakthrough, and a long way to go. It's still early, but it's absolutely going the right direction.
What role have charter schools played in this shift?
Charter schools, I think, I said repeatedly, are a piece of the answer. They're never the answer. Good charter schools are a huge piece of the solution. Bad charter schools are a piece of the problem. For charter schools to be successful, a couple things have to happen. You have to have a very high bar to entry. This cannot be let 1,000 flowers bloom. You have to pick the best of the best, and the chance to educate children, I think, is a sacred obligation. You have to couple that with real autonomy. You have to give them room to move, and clear accountability. And when you do those things, they can be a piece of the solution.
You now oversee a program called Race to the Top, $5 billion worth, more discretionary money than any Secretary of Education has ever had to try to make the changes you're talking about. But how do we know that's not the federal government putting itself in position to impose its goals and standards on local schools, on state oversight boards?
Right. We're going to use our money to invest in states and districts that are doing two things, that are closing the achievement gap and raising the bar for all students. So I've said repeatedly, the good ideas are never going to come from Washington. The good ideas are always going to come at the local level, great teachers, great principals. What we have for the first time is a chance to take to scale what's working. And I've said repeatedly that as we try and get dramatically better, we at the Department of Education have been part of the problem. We've been this big compliance-driven bureaucracy focused on audits, focused on reports, and we're trying to fundamentally change the business we're in to scale up what works, to invest in innovation, and to make sure those best practices aren't reaching a handful of children, but are reaching the overwhelming majority of children. We have a unique opportunity to fundamentally break through and to take to scale what works.
And what you're doing is setting up a competitive system where you only get the money if you meet those standards. Wasn't that kind of what happened with No Child Left Behind as well?
No.
Explain the difference.
There was no competition in No Child Left Behind, and standards got dummied down. They got reduced. And there was no upside. There were no incentives there. So this is fundamentally different.
So right now you're in the point of, tell me where you are in this program. You're in the point of judging it?
No. States are currently applying to us, and we're going to review those applications. And this is literally going to be a race to the top. I think a lot of folks still don't believe that we're just not going to fund 50 states. And I assure the audience, and hope you'll hold me accountable, this is going to be a small number of states who can help to lead the country where we need to go and break through.
How to determine the winners and the losers, or are we not looking at it that way?
We are absolutely looking that way. We're looking at folks that have the courage, that have the commitment, and that have the capacity to do these things well.
Okay. I just want to button that up, because what determines who the winners and the losers are in all of these situations is who's setting the goals and what the goals are. Who is setting the goals? It's you?
Yes.
And why we should trust you with that?
Again, it's not about me. It's about saying which states, which districts, which universities, which nonprofits can demonstrate to us their ability to raise the bar for all children and to close the achievement gap, to get dramatically better results for children. And those states that have the ability to do that, that are willing to challenge the status quo, we want to give them hundreds of millions of dollars to take to scale those best practices.
Do we have the resources? You mentioned hundreds of millions of dollars. Do we have the resources to satisfy your